H.G. Wells avait créé une machine beaucoup plus pratique que celle-ci. Juste un petit fauteuil avec une grande hélice derrière. Hop! Oh, j'aimais pas trop H.G. Wells. Ses inventions étaient bizarres. Moi, ce que j'inventais pouvait exister. Comment on sort? Ah, voilà. Je lui avais écrit une lettre à H.G. Wells en lui disant « Vos affaires, prouvez-moi qu'elles existent. » Alors, on va retirer ça aussi, je crois. Hop. Et hop. Voilà. Ah. Quel voyage dans le temps! 2 siècles! J'ai besoin d'aide pour sortir de là. Ah, bonjour mademoiselle. Voilà, si vous pouvez tirer par là, la machine a exploré le temps. On va y arriver. Merci. Superbe. Hop. Voilà. C'est quand même plus facile d'écrire des livres. Ah. Woo. Yes. Right. Welcome to Not. Yes. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I am Jules Verne. Yes, I am. Si. You know, I don't speak English, but I will try. I have my paper, of course. Oh, normally we put the time machine in the suitcase. Okay, we do it more later. Yes, welcome donc to Not. You know, I'm author, poet, futurist. My imagination took me 20,000 leagues under the sea and around the moon. Okay, but before that, I was born just right here in Nantes, sur l'île Feydeau. And my family had a house in Chantenay. All of my imagination, the first time, le point de départ is here in Nantes. À chaque fois que je voyais un bateau partir, c'est une partie de moi-même qui partait avec ce navire. But before all of that, I was born here, I say that. Okay. Au début, I don't want to write a roman. My dream was to write for the theatre, but it was not very good for the money. So I wrote des romans. Okay. You know, I'm author of more than 60 books, and I will give you my secret. Yes. How I write this. I will just say you. For writing, each day, each afternoon, I read newspaper. And I try to go to the exposition, l'exposition universelle, or congress, like this one. And I make some little notes. Notes? Okay, thank you very much for your helping. And after, I use my note to write my book. That's my secret. And it's why I said, tout ce qu'un homme peut imaginer, another one le réalisera. So, I'm not l'inventeur of the science fiction. No, it's not me. Nearly me, but it's not really me. No, it is H.G. Wells. I imagine what it is possible, but not what it is impossible. The time machine, it's impossible. To be invisible, it's impossible. But I imagine what will be happen. This one, for example. It was before in wood, but now it's like that. So it's why I'm here to see you and to et vous raconter cet après-midi all of my life during 2 or 3 hours if you want. So I understand now, I read my notes. I understand that you are in the business of providing clean energy at a time when our planet is under threat. This puts you in a position of a great opportunity and responsibility. Yes. The cities of the world are relying on you to find solutions, and you'll need all your creativity and vision in order to deliver. My only advice is to rely on the power of your collective imagination. Do not put a ceiling on your ambition. Instead, dare to imagine the impossible. And remember, as I have often said, what one man can imagine, another will someday be able to achieve. So now, in order to ignite your imagination, let us move on with our program. As we need to talk about clean energy for our cities, what a great pleasure it is for me to introduce the person responsible of making it happen right here in my hometown. Please welcome to the vice-mayor of Nantes, Mademoiselle Madame Julie Lernoz. Applause, please. Oh, you have one.
We will see if technology works. It works perfectly. So I'm very happy, together with Jules Verne, to welcome you in Nantes. We tend to have imagined back, and we used imagination of the ones that were here before us to conduct a very consistent policy with district heating. So we're very happy to have you all here. We have built on, and we will have the occasion to talk about it, thanks to the networks in which we are, and thanks also to Europe. We have built on a European networks. So I'm part of, for example, Energy, Cities and Climate Alliance, but Joanna Roland, who's mayor of Nantes, took on the presidency of Eurocities, that is also very active on the environmental issues. Because as was mentioned before, we have a great challenge because we only have a few years to be able to tackle climate change. We are the last generation who can do something about it. And we are convinced that we need to change the global thinking and the global acting. We are locally acting, but we also think we should think locally, because all our district heatings depend on the resources we have and they are different in the towns or the cities where we live. And so I think we need a pragmatic approach. We have shown the way in different cities that it is possible to be able to move on the heat and the cooling system to 100% renewable energy, and that's the challenge we face. So I'm very happy to be here, very happy to welcome you all in Nantes, and keen to the exchanges and the debates we will have to be able to tackle that challenge, because it's a great one in the years to come.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to you. I like your English, better than mine. So now, please, a warm welcome to Mr. Werner Lutz, President of Euroheat and Power in the world. You want one, two? One.
One is okay.
Hello.
So, first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you as mayor or vice mayor of the city of Nantes for your invitation coming here, and welcome you all being here, and I hope you will have a great time here in Nantes. One of the things I've enjoyed
I cannot help you.
most about being president of Euroheat and Power these past couple of years is the opportunity to bring together many different people from many different organizations from all around the world. And at moments, of course, like this. Because, well, I think district heating is so fundamentally local. We are fortunate enough to come together not as competitors, but as peers, as partners, as allies, as friends, of course. Wherever we may come from, we face common challenges and share common ambitions, of course. I always come home from events like this feeling energized and maybe most importantly reminded that many of us are fighting the same battles in their countries. I hope you will feel the same way when you leave here in a day or two or three. We will explore themes and questions that really matter to your business, to your community, and to our entire planet. So the theme of the 39th Euroheat and Power Congress, you've seen it already, is New Perspectives. Keeping this in mind, let's take again the opportunity to experience and get together. Above all, let's enjoy, and thanks again for being here with us. And now I'd like to give the word to our Managing Director of Euroheat and Power, Paul Voss. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's for you.
Do I have to dance? It's okay. Morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. You ever wonder if you're in the right job or wonder if you're in the right industry? I guess everybody does from time to time. If you ever do, there's an experience that I can recommend. I had an invitation a few weeks ago for a meeting with one of these big, scary consultancy companies with big, shiny glass buildings and stuff. And I went over there to meet them, and I thought they were trying to sell me something. And I listened to them for a few minutes, and it gradually became clear that what they wanted was for me to come work for them, which is very nice, very exciting. And I asked them what it was all about, and they wanted me to become the managing director of their sustainability practice. Sounds great. Just for fun, I asked them what their sustainability practice did. And in 4 words, what it does is seek to deregulate the business environment for mining, pesticides, oil, and chemicals. The big green 4. And you know, so I said, thank you very much. Drank their very expensive coffee, back to my office, looked around at the 14 brilliant people that I work with, thought about the hundreds and thousands of people that we're lucky enough to represent, and thought, yeah, I'm in the right place. We're in the right business. And we really are. And I am so desperate to see this industry realize its potential and succeed. Which, of course, brings me to the question of what succeeding means. You know, 5 years ago, when I got involved in all this, when people asked me how big the sector was in Europe, I said, well, we have 12, 13% of the heating and cooling market. And in 2019, when a journalist asked me, and how big is your sector? I say, well, we have about 12, 13% of the heating and cooling market. And you could get a little down looking at those numbers. And if that's all we thought about, there would be reason to worry that we were stagnating. But I think that if you scratch a little bit the surface, there is something more interesting and more promising happening underneath. Because when I talk to people locally, in cities and communities all over Europe and even around the world, I hear the same thing again and again. We are looking at this. We see district heating and cooling as the most promising solution to solve our challenge of decarbonizing heating and cooling in our city. And I hear it over and over. And maybe there's a bit of a lag because this is big infrastructure, takes time, takes planning, takes money. But there is something going on here, and I believe deeply in our potential to succeed, to win, and to help solve the problems that we're going to be discussing today, and we have serious problems. And I think that we owe it to our customers, to our communities, to our kids, to strain every sinew, take every step to make sure that we deliver what I know we can, because there's so much potential in this business, in this room, all of us. And I think standing here in 2019, I can honestly say I've never been more optimistic and excited about our common future. Speaking of the future, my real job up here this morning is to introduce our keynote speaker. And our keynote speaker is Dr. Patrick Dixon, and he is a futurist. And he's not only a futurist, but he's one of the very best in the world. Dr. Dixon has advised CEOs, leaders in business and politics around the world, and last night, over a couple of glasses of wine, me. He is a medical doctor. He has toured the world, sharing ideas, provoking thought. He's also found the time in all this to found a foundation leading the fight against AIDS. And I believe that as soon as we let him out of here, he's got to jet off to Africa to celebrate the 30th anniversary of that little venture. This is really an extraordinary person who has been called one of the most influential thinkers in business today. And we are lucky enough to have him here with us this morning. So I'm enormously honored to introduce you Dr. Patrick Dixon. Patrick.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And I need a clicker. Good morning. I want to take us on a journey actually into the future, a future that's not just an imagination, but a reality. I often say this: either we take hold of our future, or the future takes hold of us. And there isn't much time. I spend my life working with the largest companies in the world, helping them to visualize what tomorrow will be. And we've already heard about the threats to humankind. And you know, if we go back in history, we go back to the generation of Jules Verne even. It was in Pearl Street Station in New York that we saw the first experiment in a centralized district solution to a big problem, recognizing that scale is absolutely critical for efficiency. And now, so many years later, we're in an industry which, of course, as you know, we're projecting 250 billion district investments in order to solve the same problem that Thomas Edison had back then, which is how do we fix the world in an affordable way, in a sustainable way, in an efficient way. And it makes absolutely no sense to have tiny little units inside every person's house, in his day burning coal, today's day burning gas, without or electricity in a single person's bedroom with an air conditioning system. This is absolutely crazy, it's unsustainable, and I would say immoral. And morality is at the heart of this conference today. I'm going to say now, I will say again, that you have a moral duty to grow your business. Why? Because if you believe, put your hands up, if you believe that your business has a solution which will help to save the planet, put up your hands if you believe that. In that case, my friends, it is not a question of returning shareholder value. I hope and pray you are very profitable, because the more profitable you are, the more money you will have for innovation, for success, to promote your mission. But let us be clear that you're about a higher purpose than that. And your mission is to change the world. Okay, sorry, forgive me, I'm passionate. And, I started off as a physician looking after people dying of cancer before I got confronted with the AIDS pandemic, which my wife and I have been seeking to deal with over the last 30 years. I learned looking after people dying of cancer, that life is very short. I learned that when I was 25. I learned that life's too short to do things you don't believe in. Put up your hands if you think that's true. Life's too short to work for a company you think is rubbish, right? I'll tell you this, you're on a mission. Let us celebrate that mission today, and let's accelerate that journey. Okay. Now, I learned that the greatest risk for any company is 2 words. It's not a lack of innovation or lack of cash, it's institutional blindness. It's so easy to be blind. We think we know the problem, we think we know our customer, we think we know the needs of the people on the other side of the table who are interested in a district heating conversation. But actually, it's easy to be blind. Let me give you an example. So I was in Paris the other day, Michelin star restaurant, and I'm trying to attract the waiter's attention. Fantastic wine, amazing food, but for some reason, the waiter is spending all his time looking for insects on the floor. Put up your hands if you've had that problem. You can't get the waiter's attention in a great restaurant. Put up your hands. How much does it cost to teach a waiter to look up? You know, every time I can read this room at the speed of light, several hundred people are leaking data to me. It is streaming to me. I can tell your mood and your thinking right now. I can certainly tell if I've worked as a waiter when I was training to be a doctor. I could read the minds of every table at the speed of light. Champagne, tea, coffee, sweet, and the bill. Champagne, tea, coffee, drink. And of course, it's so efficient because one journey back to here, and I come back with champagne, tea, coffee, the bill, tea, coffee, yes, the bill, thank you very much. And every time I smile, I make money. Champagne, tea, coffee, because almost all the profit of that restaurant comes from the second bottle of champagne. It comes from the sweet, the coffee, and the other things. How crazy. How much does it cost to use your eyes? 0. How long to train a waiter to look? 20 seconds. How long for the waiter to learn the trick will double his income in his back pocket every night? 1 hour. How long for that restaurant to go from loss to profit? 1 night. I promise you we can find institutional blindness inside district heating solutions as well, district cooling and so on. Here's another example. And the good news, you can deal with it for almost nothing. If you want to double the speed of growth of district heating, I promise you, the secret is the magic. It's not improving your innovation. Yes, that matters, but it's little things. It's the little things in the telling of the story that do the deal. Here's another example, institutional blindness. I went to a hotel the other day. I woke up in the morning. I was jet-lagged, I could hardly walk, I was so jet-lagged. I'm staggering to the bathroom, feeling my way, trying to find the shower, and I had a disaster. By mistake, I had a shower in hair wax. Now, I know that you would never have I've also had showers with hair conditioner. Put up your hands if you too have had a shower with hair conditioner by mistake. Have a look. You know, it's 1/3 of you. 1/3 of people in this room have had a hair conditioner shower. I had 800 CEOs of one of the largest of Starwood's hotel group in my audience. I can tell you, 30% of all CEOs of leading hotels like Hilton's have also had showers in hair conditioner in the last 6 months. Now, how can this be? It's crazy. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because I need reading glasses, but I don't take them into the shower. Now, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. How much does it cost to print a larger print on the size of the bottle? Shower gel, hair conditioner, wax. It's simple. Tiny things create magic. It's easy to be blind. Even when you are having hair conditioner showers in your own hotel and you own it, why on earth don't you go and print a bigger bottle? Crazy. Here's another example. Okay, put up your hands if you've had this problem. You were shopping for something for your wife or your husband at Christmas, but you just wanted to sit down and do your email for a few minutes. Put up your hands if you need. I mean, how much is... I lecture all over the world on the future of retail, digital, mobile, communications, e-commerce, and the digital revolution. I say, for goodness sake, how much does it cost to go and buy a chair? You could have told them that. So how is it that shopping malls who spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the future of retail don't understand that when you build shopping malls, you create places to sit? Blindness. Now, while we're laughing at them, I'm just saying the good news is it's easy to be blind ourselves, but when you see something, you can deal with it and double the speed of growth of your business. So let's have a look and see how to do that, and as we see the future. So the trouble is, whatever happens, whatever industry you're in, stuff happens. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are, events overtake strategy. And that's a big challenge for district heating, because you're going to have to persuade the person on the other side, even the regulator or the government or whatever, that your solution will last. It will still be relevant in 50 years. Here is a problem. You see, here is an event. It took place in 20 seconds in Japan. As a result, another event took place 20 seconds later. A crack in a nuclear reactor. It resulted in a huge emotional reaction. Germany cancelled nuclear. Look at this. This is nuclear power in blue, and you can see after cancellation, this huge withdrawal of nuclear power. Very sad. You see, what happened at the same time was that Germany was investing a huge amount in renewables to try and reduce the amount of carbon dioxide emissions. That entire investment in green energy was wiped out by the loss of nuclear. There's no decarbonization at all. Listen, in the same year, Japan also cancelled nuclear. But in the same year, China and the UK decided to go for the biggest nuclear building program in history. What do we understand? The future is not about technology, my friends. It's not just about, it is, yes, but not just about innovation or clever ideas, not about your negotiating powers or economic decisions. The future is driven in the energy market by one key word as well. This single word is, what is the single word? The single word is emotion. You see, Germany and Japan cancelled nuclear in the same year after the same news. The UK and China boomed nuclear. If you want to understand the future of nuclear power, or indeed of district solutions, we need to understand emotional reactions to the same events can be different in different territories. Emotional reactions cause governments to be elected. Emotional reactions drive the need for regulation. Emotional reactions stop fracking in one territory. Emotional reactions in another territory force fracking. Emotional reactions are really, really important. And if you want to grow the speed of your business in its expansion, then we need to understand what these emotional points are and use them a lot. A member of my extended family made a program. His name was David Attenborough. He made a program called Blue Planet. As a result of 60 minutes of one program, the world changed in 120 days. Put up your hands if your children are talking about things like plastic straws more than they were 2 years ago. My friends, emotional reactions change history. They change policies, they change regulations, they change the behavior of companies, they open opportunities. These things really, really matter. Emotional reactions to things like gigantic storms blamed on global warming. I believe we will see events in future relating to global warming passion, which are far more significant, 1,000 times more powerful than any BBC program about plastic straws. Which is the bigger issue, my friends? Is it plastic in the ocean or the survival of the human being itself? So of course we will see more passion about these kinds of issues. Of course we will see more passion about smart cities, centralized solutions, being more efficient, and getting practical things done quickly for the sake of 1 billion children alive today. We were talking last night about your own children. Thank you for the kind introduction. And you were saying, when you told me the story, forgive me, I hope this isn't confidential, But you were saying, I would not be able to face my 8-year-old daughter in the eye at 8 years old and tell her I had changed my job from Euroheat and power to go and work for a carbon-producing oil company. These things matter, isn't that correct? Yeah, correct. For the sake of 1 billion children alive today, all of whom will be adults soon, all of whom will judge this generation. We will never see 1 billion children anywhere on the earth again in human history because fertility rates are collapsing as incomes are rising. 85% of humanity lives in emerging markets. Sometimes I wonder why we spend so much time talking about Europe, or Britain in Europe, or Britain out of Europe, or Europe in this, and Europe. Who cares? The future of humanity, my friends, will be driven by the needs, the hopes, and dreams, and the wealth of 85% of humanity that live in places like Malaysia, Uganda, Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, Nigeria. These are the nations which will drive our future. These are the nations which will dominate the earth in terms of policy making and economy in the longer term, just as they do today in numbers. Now, it's true that 1% of the world owns 50% of the wealth and has 50% of the power economically, and all of us in this room are 1%ers. But this will change. It's true that if we're going to fix this problem, if we want to have the moral high ground, we cannot just talk about district heating solutions in Frankfurt. We have to talk about district cooling solutions in Baghdad. We have to talk about providing basic energy access to 1 billion people who still have no power. Here is population growing from 1990 through to 2014. This is the scandal that we still have 1 billion without power. We need to be part of this wider conversation to build a better world, and that is the context for district heating. You know, 1 billion people are on the move. In the next 30 years, you will see 1 billion human beings walk across from one village to a town, from a town to a bigger town, maybe on the back of a melon lorry, from a bigger town to a large city, and from a large city in a poor country, they jump across a border to a large city in a wealthy country. How do I know 1 billion? 1 billion because this is a trend which has been going for 50 years. Every week, every day, every month, partly because of what we have seen. When you have these kinds of gigantic contrasts, where 1% owns 50% of the wealth, you don't need to be a futurist to see the trend. People will move. They will move because they see your lifestyle on CNN in a small cafe in the middle of Afghanistan. They move. And as they move, they create demand for infrastructure. They arrive usually in megacities where they make their homes out of plastic and metal and sheets and pieces of paper. We will spend more in the next 30 years on infrastructure than we have in all of human history because of this. We are seeing urbanization on a gigantic scale, and we need responses on a similarly gigantic scale. Many of them will be centralized, which is precisely what we're seeing in nations like China today. So district solutions, absolutely critical. Here is an example of the scale of infrastructure building. This is Sri Lanka, a nation I am often visiting. It has half the income level of India, very poor. But here is China building a city in the sea out of sand. Why? To grab the logistics in that port. But they see a future in Sri Lanka. Chinese money, building Chinese infrastructure. You can be sure Chinese district this, district that, district the other, citywide this, citywide that. This is the era of smart cities, of the era of integrated solutions. This is the era of a $50 trillion green tech revolution, maybe twice that. And why? Well, all the time underlying it is the ticking clock. I have a clock in front of me that's ticking the seconds. 57, 56, 55, 54, 53. I see it in my eye. What we don't see is this ticking clock which worries so many people, this ticking clock of carbon dioxide levels, we don't know what it means. There is not a human being on Earth that is certain what that means. We have no idea, but we have plenty of worries. And those worries will continue to grow. We can debate the science of global warming, but the future is not about science. It's about one word, which is emotion. It's a question is, what do people believe? What do people think about this kind of thing? How many people in the world will believe a graph like this? That actually you can only spend this amount of the carbon that we have without breaking a 2 degrees centigrade rise, which means that almost all of the carbon we already have found we will never be able to use. Even if it's not correct, I believe it is. Even if we're wrong, if just 5% of the world is passionately convinced, tightly well organized, hugely influential, they will drive the biggest change in human history regarding the use of energy. Meanwhile, there are other threats. I don't know the answer to this question. I have no idea about the future of methane, but it worries me. There's more methane rises going on than CO2. You know this graph, CO2, temperature, and methane, but look at the methane here. The red is temperature, the gray carbon dioxide, the methane off the scale. I don't know what it means, but I do know this. I invite any of you, after this meeting is over, to go to the airport with me this afternoon and fly 3 hours on a plane, and we will land, and we will drive 20 minutes to a place where we will stand above the earth at night tonight. We will go like this on the earth, and we will take a lighter, and we will ignite a huge flame of methane gas, which is now bubbling up this summer from frozen deposits, which are beyond calculation. Does it matter? I have no idea. All I know is the carbon reserves that are locked in the permafrost, I think some would say, are equal to or more than all the gas reserves proven in the world today. Does it matter? It might. So we have a huge task. We agree, but we need to present this case more powerfully than ever before. And I have to say, quite frankly, I have looked at many of the websites relating to centralized district solutions and so on, and I feel that there is something missing from what I'm reading. I really do. I'm seeing lots of technology, lots of sophistication. I'm missing the passion. I'm not hearing the moral conviction that this has to be part of the solution in every municipal area. Forgive me, maybe your website's different, but I'm not hearing it. New ways to finance, we're going to see this on a gigantic scale. 4-year payback, it's very elegant. So there are companies, as you know, they go to people who have places like this, and they say, when was this built? And they say 15 years ago. They say, well, it's probably out of date. We will replace all of your heating, your light, your systems. We will replace the aircon for free. You say, what? Well, for free. What? All the consulting is free on one condition. What's that? We want you to show us your heat and gas bills, your gas, power, electricity, everything, for the last 5 years. Show us how many units of power you are currently using, and we will calculate your average bill. And you contract to us to pay us the same amount of money for the next 4 years. That's as simple as that. You see, we save so much money putting in the system, and you're going to carry on paying us this huge amount of energy cost, and we will pocket the difference, and we make so much profit, it pays for it, it's free. I don't know anyone that wouldn't want to sign such a contract. And that we're seeing not just with buildings, with people like Johnson Controls, but also with street lamps. You know, I fly over a city like London. My city is going dark. Did you notice this? Paris, the same. Why are they going dark? I'll tell you why. Because people have been going up to the municipal authorities. Say, can I have a meeting with you? Say, I will replace all your street lamps for free. Say, what? Yes, all the lamps, all the bulbs, all the control systems for free, everything for free. I will do the consultancy paper to prove that for free. You just need to sign the piece of paper. What's the piece of paper? Just show me your electricity bills for the last 4 years for lighting your streets. You continue to pay me the same electricity bill for the next 4 years, maybe 5, and after that, all the system is yours for free. You have it, everything, because I will make so much money out of the power savings in the first 4 years that I make a huge profit. Oh, by the way, we have all the banking finance you want. I don't know any district in London that wouldn't sign such an agreement. And that is the reason why, when you fly over London, London is glowing black. Not because it's little magic. You see the magic, the little thing. How much does it cost to make such a deal? 0. How much does it cost to have the meeting? 10 minutes, an hour of your time. How long to make the case? 1 hour. It's so compelling. It's so simple. It's so magical. Why wouldn't we sign it? So we have a moral duty to sign. It's made very easy. And we've made the case more powerfully than ever that this really will save you money and that we believe in this too. Really clever. Now, of course, with something like district solutions, you're going to need a much longer process and it's a much bigger capital investment. It's much more complicated by several thousand-fold. I'm just saying, expect accelerated take-up through simple mechanisms. So what about oil? Well, we know, of course, that the oil markets, the gas markets, and they affect us in every solution because every solution we present, the district ones, for example, are in the context of a wider energy market. So we have to look at what's happening. And what we're seeing is chaos. As a result of national security interests of the United States, we saw a commitment to become the largest oil producer in the world. And of course, that's been fulfilled as a result, not just of President Trump, but more importantly, Reagan, in turn, as a response to 9/11 and other problems, other disasters. Shale gas innovation is just one innovation out of thousands I could talk about today. One innovation, one country, one period of 60 months, 5 years. But in 5 years, that single innovation has increased the global reserves, proven reserves of gas from 60 to 200 years. My goodness, this is something for Jules Verne to have written about. Transformational, dramatic, causing chaos in energy markets. Now, of course, we've been anti-coal for a long time in many parts of the world, partly because when we remove coal, we become more efficient. In fact, as a result of the collapse of gas prices, coal stations became uneconomic. 57 power stations went out of business in America. Just removing 5 was the equivalent of installing 9,000 megawatts from wind because gas was so much more efficient. But with all this chaos came chaos, of course, in every other sector, including green tech. And I can tell you that the US gas glut, of course, meant that coal stopped being used, so the coal prices fell, the global market fell for coal. Suddenly, my Vietnamese friends are building coal-fired power stations. Vast numbers of them to absorb all this spare coal that America has just saved because of the falling gas prices. So what was the actual benefit to humankind? So we're beginning to understand that this is a very complicated global market. And as for coal, my goodness, look at this. This is so depressing to me. 1700, this is the year 1700, when the UK was responsible for an awful lot of the world's coal with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. The UK itself down to 0 nearly. India, Australia, but look at China. This is China's consumption of coal. And we look at their combined heat and power, their version of district solutions. They've doubled the power generation in 5 years. Most of it is now gas-driven. And of course, we hope to see much more complicated and sophisticated things with solar and wind and thermal, geothermal, heat exchange, all kinds of things built into district solutions in future. But at the moment, in China, many, perhaps most of all their combined units are still powered by coal. And in fact, if we look at the decarbonization of our world, it stopped. It never happened. Look, 1990 through to 2014, this is the International Energy Agency at the World Bank. They're showing almost no difference in the amount of energy globally coming from fossil fuels if you include heating, and no carbon. So what I'm saying is we are going to have to go an awful lot faster, more than we ever imagined. So the European Union came up with this great strategy, 40% from wind, great, good. That we've seen dramatic increases in solar. And it's true that 1 hour of sunlight on the Earth, as you know, could power all human activity for 12 months. It's true we can power the whole of America from an area of desert, maybe 20 or 30 kilometers by 80, and the same in Europe from the desert in the Sahara, especially using new kinds of grids. It's true that solar cell prices are 0.4% of what they were in 1975. They continue to fall dramatically. That's true. It's true that next generation will be up to 40% more efficient. It's true that we're seeing 25 square kilometers of solar in China, 52 square kilometers in India. These are not just district, these are city-wide energy solutions, which are ideal to integrate into all kinds of district solutions that we are building already. It's true that we are now seeing energy prices going into reverse. In June 2013, in Germany, as many of you know, the energy was being produced was so great from solar and wind that the prices became free and then negative. So that people perhaps who owning factories were told that actually unless you, we will pay you to take the power. Turn on your aircon, turn on your heating, and we will pay you for every kilowatt you can take at 3 times the commercial rate. In Australia, we have seen the same in Queensland in the last year. Actually, in Australia, 10% of all the power generation in that country is used for only 72 hours a year. So this power plant here could be offline for the entire year except for 3 hot days. That means that the average energy price goes up in that period of 4 days a year from $50 per megawatt hour up to $10,000 per megawatt hour. No wonder Tesla's building batteries. So it's true, we have huge issues to balance these things. We have also the technology to do it. We have these new grids, the high voltage direct current grid, which can push power, as you know, 5,000 kilometers without much loss. I have sat in a meeting with the head of the national grid from Russia, one side, and on the other was the head of the national grid in China. And China planning to ship electricity 7,000 kilometers from Beijing to Moscow using these grids. So our world is being changed. Meanwhile, Tesla alone in a single factory will double the output of the entire world's lithium batteries. It's true, we have the technology now to take surplus wind power from Denmark, convert it to methane gas, to put it back in a gas field, and then ship it back to Poland to heat them next winter. We are in extraordinary days for integration of energy. It's true already that 1% of global energy is data centers. What a fantastic opportunity for district solutions. It's true that in the UK, you may not believe these figures would actually happen because the UK seems incapable of deciding anything at the moment. But I just want you to understand the passion. The reason the government has put this here as a promise is because the people are demanding it. And in every European nation, we are seeing the same trend. So the UK is saying that every large building estate for housing must have a central solution inside it in the future. This is being forced by regulation because of emotion, passion. So the passion is on our side to integrate, to be smart with the wind and heat pumps and solar and cogeneration and industry surplus heat and biomass, whatever it takes to make our world protected from these greatest risks. And it is also true, we have many problems to solve in terms of choice for the consumer and allowing communities to feel that they are still in control of their own bills and so on. I just finished with this thought. You know, I've said that more of the same cannot possibly deal with the problem. I've said, last week I was one of the largest wind companies in the world. Next week I might be one of the biggest solar companies in the world. Today I'm with you guys. My message is the same. What we are doing cannot deliver what the world needs. Your strategy in your company may be to grow maybe 4%, 8%, 12% this year. God bless you. It will not solve the problem. Collectively, as a community in this room, we need a strategy to grow this industry not by 3 to 4% a year for the next 10 years, but by 10 to 20% a year for the next 20 years. We have a moral duty to do this, to deliver it well, to innovate, to keep ahead of the technology changes and opportunities. Here's the question. I told you about David Attenborough's film. I'm asking you a question. By the way, most debates about the future, in my experience, I work at board level across every industry. Most debates about the future are not about what's going to happen because it's so obvious. It's so obvious. I gave a lecture recently to General Motors on the future of cars. We're not going to have a debate about, the only debate that they want to have is, by what date will most people in this city who buy a new car be buying a pure electric car? By what date? That's the debate, not if it's going to happen. Oh, and by what date will most of those cars drive themselves and have no steering wheel? That's the debate. So I want to ask you a question about timing, because that's the debate. Here's a debate we can have. By what date will it really happen? In the last 24 months, we saw a really happening event regarding plastic in oceans. I think we will agree. It's a kind of unstoppable force now. It will lead to legislation. Many companies are changing faster than the regulations demand. By what date will it have happened, really happened? What do I mean? By what date will our world, many, many people in our world, decide that we are so late in responding to global warming that we now need to move up, not just an increase of 5 to 10% or a little bit of tax relief or a little bit of incentive, but we need to move almost to a global war footing to fight this menace. In the last few days, I can't remember exactly the date it happened, an asteroid flew that was so big, so close to our Earth, it could have hit one of our satellites. That asteroid was 250 kilometers wide, and as far as I understand, it would have wiped out the whole of life on Earth. I promise you that if NASA was to identify such a satellite with a 0.1% probability of hitting the Earth, I promise you our world would be aligned in a joint effort the like which we have never before seen in human history. Would you put up your hands if you agree with that? I promise you, my friends, that if our world becomes collectively convinced, even that there's an 0.1% risk that the whole of humanity could effectively be wiped or compromised or society adversely affected, with the same strength of conviction about the 0.1% risk of an asteroid actually hitting us, we would see a most gigantic effort. And you should be ready for it. And what would that mean? Well, I was reflecting that the First World War cost the United States economy 56% of its GDP. Did America cease to exist economically? No. The wonderful thing is, if you do go through an economic slump and you decide to spend 5% of your economy on, central district solutions, what does it do? It increases jobs. It's actually a natural stimulus. It's not wasted stuff. How could it be wasted stuff? If you build and new wind turbines with 1% of your entire national product, or 2% of your tax revenues. It stimulates the economy. It creates jobs. It builds opportunities for people. It puts money. It's better than just giving people tax relief in their pocket. You actually got a wind turbine at the end. So we can easily imagine that there could be a time when governments around the world collectively agree to an average, let us say, of 1.5% of their entire national economies, an increase from government itself to be spent on green energy, in addition to all the natural investments already going on as a result of market forces. And of course, that would cause a gigantic catch-up. So, in conclusion, I end as I began, by saying how much I passionately believe in your mission and your calling to help build a better world. You are a key component to a comprehensive solution to perhaps the greatest threat that our world has ever faced. And district heating and cooling and all the hundreds of thousands of technologies and pieces associated with it have a vital role to play in the future, and we have a moral responsibility to convey this message to the whole of society. So I wish you every success in this important mission that you're on. Thank you very much.
Whoa.
Thank you.
Patrick, you're not going anywhere. Get back up here. That's too easy. Thank you for your energy and for your, my God, you must be tired. But I have a question. If you have just a tiny drop of energy left. You know, we had a chat last night and we were talking about this asteroid, this theoretical asteroid that could come and wipe us all out. And yeah, I think that we would very quickly get ourselves organized and you would see this collective effort to solve our problem. But I said to Patrick, no one profits from an asteroid coming and destroying the whole Earth. It's a bit different when it comes to climate change. And I worry sometimes that as a civilization, as a species, we don't necessarily have our priorities in the right order, and I don't think that there is anything like the degree of consensus that's required that's going to push us to take action. So we need another David Attenborough film, and even that might not be enough. You're an optimist, I feel it. Can it happen? What needs to happen that there's this click, and suddenly climate change becomes an asteroid?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. All I know is what we would learn from history as we look back to the time of Jules Verne. And I'm really glad that it's good to start in the past. If you want to understand the future, as many have said, you go back into history. History contains important lessons for us. And we've seen this over and over again, that entire nations become convinced by a cause, and they rise up, hopefully, to positively address it. And what is difficult is to predict the time when that happens. But historians, when they look back at such popular movements, we call them people movements, they will usually say, and they write long essays on it, and then children are taught these things at school, and then we do PhDs on these things. What were the events that led up to this global movement, this political change? The collapse of the Iron Curtain, how did it happen, in 1990? And historians will always look for those factors leading up to it, which created a high probability of such an event. And I would say, looking at history, that those factors are already in place. So we have a global awareness. Yes, we have almost complete agreement that it is an issue, simply a debate about how serious and what we can do about it anyway, and what proportionate share of the costs of this should be borne by developed nations versus emerging nations. That's a moral question, since I've already said 1% of humankind owns 50% of the world. And this 1% has to make peace with the 99% of the rest of the world that are saying, you had your industrial revolution, it's my turn. And this is an important moral question. And if we can find a grown-up way to have an agreement about that, which may be painful to the developed nations, then I believe we have a solution. But we will not, if the 1% of the world continues to just point the finger at the 99% and say, you can't grow, you can't build your cities. We think it's immoral that you're burning coal in Vietnam. They say, well, you burnt a lot of coal in your time. It's our turn. You need to clean your world up and allow us some carbon freedom to burn some coal, or pay us to burn something else. And in a way, there is I think, a justifiable argument. So the scene is set for a monumental change. I can't predict the time at which that will take place. I hope and pray for the future of humankind that this event takes place in the next 20 years, but it could take place in the next 10. And it will not be driven by politicians waving pieces of paper at a big international conference. It will be driven by an aggressive movement of humankind. People, actually, 10 years' time, your daughter will be 18. She could well be the generation that makes it happen.
I'd be happy if she learns to tie her shoes.
Okay.
Look, Patrick, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Let's clap for Patrick one more.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, it's time to discuss what all this means for us as a business in practice. I would like to invite to the stage Ms. Philippa Nuttall-Jones. Philippa is the editor-in-chief of Foresight, which is, for my money, the best energy and environment publication going in Europe right now. I find myself reading it in my spare time. And it's nice to see that there is still such a thing as serious journalism, particularly in this important field. Philippa has a long background in European affairs. She's a passionate environmentalist and an outstanding journalist, and we're very pleased to welcome her today. Philippa, come on up.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'm not sure I can follow the previous speaker, but I shall try. We're now going to take that look at the future. We're going to jump into our time machine and see how we can get to the future in terms of district heating and cooling. This session is entitled Entering the Time Machine, A Glimpse of Our Future. I think we need to give more than a glimpse of our future and actually look at what that future will be and the concrete steps that will enable us to get there. Leading this journey today, we have 4 very competent speakers. Unfortunately, one traveller was not able to come today. So I'd like to invite the 4 speakers onto the stage and we can start the discussion. Thank you. So today's panel is already a glimpse of the future in the sense that we have 4 women and 1 man. So looking at the audience, this is the future. So our panelists today I'd like to introduce. We have on my left Carole Le Gall, who's Chief Executive Officer of the Business Unit France Networks for ENGIE. Sylvie Jeannot, Chairwoman and Chief Executive Officer at Dalkia. Julie, who I think needs no introduction, you were all here before, Vice Mayor of Nantes Métropole, and Anton Koller, who is Divisional President for District Energy with Danfoss. So I shall give each speaker 5 to 10 minutes to introduce their vision of the future, and then we'll have a panel discussion and then open the floor to questions. So as you're listening, please think of what you'd like to ask so that we can have a very interactive debate. Thank you. Carole.
Thank you, Philippa. Good morning to you all. I'm very happy to be here in Nantes, a very attractive, stunning Euro city. I was born in Nantes, and a long time ago also. I worked here. It's good to be back and find this city very innovative, very committed in sustainable development. My grandmother lives nearby, south of Nantes, in the area where you grow the wine in the vineyard. So you cannot leave Nantes without testing Muscadet, a very famous wine. So bring Muscadet home. So happy to be here today to speak about the future. We can say that time goes by, and not so slowly. It's for sure that climate change used to be a scientific issue, and then it became an activist issue with individuals or local communities pioneering and taking this issue very seriously. And then it became a big government issue and big ceremonies where the big commitments were signed. And I believe we are entering a new era where more and more people feel concerned and feel that climate change is not only for big governments, but for them also as individuals. We have seen that in France with the people marching in the streets, yellow jackets people, but also people marching for sustainable development. We see a lot of students signing manifestos where they say that they won't go in companies that do not work for a sustainable future. So I think that the issue that we speak about has changed in nature. It's not only a technical and not only an economic issue, it is a political, to the very beautiful sense of it, political issue. This sense of emergency, more and more people have it, so that means that there is this big fight ahead of us, and when there is a big fight, all the tribes must gather and fight together. So it is important that all the tribes, the local communities, the European, the national communities, the big companies, the local companies, individuals, all fight together for this against this big threat. So ENGIE's ambition is to be part of this fight, to be the leader of the zero carbon transition as a service, serving companies and local communities. We are a global company, 160,000 people globally, but we are also a local company. Here in Nantes, there is 2,500 people, ENGIE people, very cool people, the leader of the cooling systems with our Axima colleagues, with the headquarters here in Nantes, and very hot people also working for energy efficiency in heating and district heating. Our vision is that the zero carbon transition is going to be 3D driven. 3D, by 3D we mean decentralized. We know that local communities are going to be key, that they must take the lead at local scale. We find solutions together. That's why district heating and cooling are also so key in this fight. The future is going to be digitalized. We know that all these new technologies is a big help to be more customer-centric, to be closer to our customer, to find, to have a better understanding and knowledge of the right energy needed at the right moment. So we'll be more clever with the fully digitalized world. And of course, it has to be decarbonized, and it is key to find new sources, and we have plenty of sources of energy that are decarbonized. And in DHC, already in France, more than 50%, I think nationally is more than 54% of the DHC, of the energy delivered through the DHC is already recovery and renewable energy. So DHC is key for this fight, as it was said. ENGIE is the leader in France of DHC, and we know we need to go further. There was a big call here made just before, and so what is the next step? The next step, we maybe for DHC, we could say it's the 5G. I'll keep with the letters. G, first G as growth. We must develop DHC and increase the amount of energy that we deliver through DHCs. And in the national plan for the energy transition, we're supposed to more than double in the next 10 years the amount of energy served with DHC. We know it's a fantastic challenge. The second G is geographic footprint. Of course, this growth will go through local communities, more communities willing to go for DHEs, opening new DHEs, and also local communities having DHCs growing in their DHCs. So the geographic footprint is key. We need to have this very good understanding of the local geography. And the third G, of course, is green. We must go green. So the biomass, of course, is green, and gas, which is already the best friend to the DHC, because it makes the DHC flexible. Biogas is the future. So we strongly believe in ENGIE that we need to push the biogas as being a key for the future. I'd like to speak about the fourth G, which is geothermal. In a lot of areas in France, there is a strong geothermal resource for middle temperature, but everywhere in France we can use geothermal also for low temperature. So geothermal is a source that many people have, and we must more work together to deliver for it. And the fifth G is the next generation. We know that combining all this will work differently. Networks are already quite sophisticated. They use different technologies. We mix energies. We produce and store and share energy. So it's a mix of infrastructure and services more and more. And also we fully understand better now that we not only deliver energy, we deliver more than that. We deliver environmental performance, we deliver economic development, local development, and we deliver social also inclusion by being able to also offer competitive and affordable energy for all. So the networks of the next generation, there will be different networks, sophisticated, having in mind people first, people and local territories first. So to do that, we must keep innovating, we must keep collaborating with all the partners, all the fighters against climate change. I would like to give first the example of what we're doing, of course, in Nantes Métropole. We're very proud to help develop and exploit and maintenance and this very big network here in Nantes. Already 84% of renewable and recovery energy, which is and it's the second largest network in France. It's outside from Paris, so a very large network, and having more ambition for the future. And I'd like also to give the name of Now Then, which is a startup here in Nantes, born in Nantes, developing in Nantes, but with a very bright future ahead. They are specialists of microscale waste-to-energy systems based on pyrogasification and CHP. So we are very proud to be a partner of this small but promising startup, local startup, and try to continue to grow together and fight together. My key message is really that we believe at ENGIE that partnership is key to succeed, because we know it's difficult, as Paul said. We're living in a world where a lot of things already exist, and we must change things. We must fight against our own organization, sometimes collective organization, to find a way, yes, to push for a zero carbon transition. So it's a wonderful fight. It's a fight for the future and for the next generation.
Thank you very much. Lots of good points to kick us off there. Sylvie. Oh. Sylvie, do you want to explain what you're doing at Dalkia?
So good morning to everybody. It's also a great pleasure for me to be here in Nantes, very committed territory in environmental issues. So just only one word more about the climate change, because I listen often to Mr. Jouzel, who is one of the most famous, maybe climatologists in France, and he says that if we do not do nothing here in Nantes, after 20 and 50, maybe we could have peak temperatures above 50 degrees. So you can imagine 50 degrees is around the temperature in the Death Valley in summer. So we don't want that. So we want to act, of course, and we are very proud in Dalkia to act. We are also a partner of the town of Nantes. And what I would like to say that it is very interesting to be here, because district heating is a solution, and why is one of the solutions, and it is really important. Why? Because if you look at the total consumption, it is true in France, in Europe, and the world. If you look at the total consumption, the question of heat represents around 50 of the consumption. So it is so important to solve the questions to make green this heat, because it is 50 of the total consumption. So, and district heating networks are, of course, a good solution to do that. And when we look at the figures in Europe, I would say there is a paradox in France, because we are late. Only 6% of the heating in France come from the district heating. Only 6%. If you take into account the north of Europe, especially in Sweden, for example, it is 70%. In the north, it is an average 50% heating from district heating. In France, only 6%. So, but I can say we are late, and maybe I can say that it is a chance, it is an opportunity, because if we are late, we are going to be able to develop a lot district heating network in France. We have lots of projects in front of us, and it is also a chance because we are going to develop renewables district heatings. If we look at Germany, they have around 12% of the heating from district heating, but the part of the renewables is only 10. In France, we can be very proud, because the part of renewables in district heating is above 50%. We are at 56%. So it's a good point. But we have lots of projects to develop also in France. So and I am very optimistic, because we have lots of opportunities to develop, and we know how to do that. We have the know-how, especially in France. Just a little parenthesis about Dalkia. So we have two businesses in Dalkia. The first one is to develop renewables through district heating or district cooling. Big part of our business. We manage 350 district heating in France. And the second part is also a very, very important thing, because maybe the best energy is the one we don't use, we don't consume. So saving energy is one of our business. The second one, I would say, through operation and maintenance services, energy efficiency services, and it is the second part of our business. So renewables and energy efficiency, we are very proud of that, because renewables and energy efficiency, we are the heart of how to fight against climate change. And so the know-how is here. And we have 15,000 people in France, not exactly 14,000 in France and 2,000 out of France. We have also district heatings in Poland, for example. And the point is how to develop renewables district heatings. So what are the district heating of the future? I would say 3 points. The first one is green. So green is renewables, renewables, and renewables. And the first renewable energy in France is biomass. So biomass, the wood, the fuel wood, and energy from wood is really, really important. So we are going to develop biomass a lot, and we have a lot to do. Because when you look at the forests, at the moment in France, we only use a part of the growth of the forest. So it's good for the forest, and it is a very, very local resource. I know some of you visited yesterday the biomass plant we have with the town of Nantes, and I know some of you were very impressive, because it's so interesting to see how the wood can be used to provide heat to the inhabitants in Nantes. I would say the second green is also geothermy. I agree. Geothermal energy is everywhere, and especially we have lots of production in Ile-de-France. But geothermy means also, for example, to use the energy from sea in the south of France. Maybe we could do that also in Nantes, in the south of France, in Marseille. We use the energy from the sea. So it's a kind of geothermal to produce cooling and heating. Waste energy is also a way to provide renewables to produce district heating. I have a very good example at the moment in France. We're going to inaugurate it in Perpignan. We have a heating district with 90% of not exactly renewables, but waste to energy to produce heat in the networks. And just to stop a little about what I call recovery energy. You know, recovery energy is how to use the heat that is lost, you know. We spoke about the data center just before with Mr. Dixon. So when you have a data center, you have a lot of heat and you can use it, you can recover, you can collect this heat to produce heat in district heatings. We have a big example, for example, in Charleville-Mézières also. Our projects are very local. Climate change is also a question of local projects. In Charleville-Mézières, we have a big recovery heating on, the smelting furnace from PSA, Peugeot Citroën. They have big furnaces and they produce a lot of heat. This heat went to the sky, and now this heat is used for the district heating. So it is a question between a town, Charleville-Mézières, an industrial, PSA, and Dalkia, and this meet produced a very good project for the climate change. So first is green. The second point I would say to succeed in district heating is smart. Smart is of course sorry for this pronunciation, digitization, how to put digital on networks. Every points are connected, of course. It is connected because we have to optimize the energy consumption. And we also, when I say smart, it is also the question of storage, because you can imagine that water is easy to storage, and when we have storages on a network, it is easy to optimize the quality of the energy mix. That means the level of the renewables energy we can produce. So smart is, of course, to have digital points of networks, to be connected, to work with startups, but also a question of how to monitorize the networks with storage and to have a smart grid in a smart city. So smart is the second point. And I would finish with another word, which is people-oriented. So green, smart, and people-oriented. What I mean with that is that 2 points around people-oriented. I think we do think about the competitiveness of our price, the tariffs. It is so important to fight also against fuel poverty, fuel poor. So we have this in mind always, just to have competitiveness in the price. And the second point is also, and it is also the question Patrick Dixon told us, it is about the awareness of people. I think through our heating district or cooling districts, we make people aware of what does it mean to use very local resources, renewable resources on the territory to produce a new energy to decarbonize. So when we have the district heating, we replace gas boiler, we replace fuel boilers, and so it is good for the planet. So to do that, we make our plants people visit, so like we did yesterday, and just to make people realize that the energy is also local, and it can be good to fight against climate change.
Thank you, Sylvie. Julie?
Yes, so I've been speaking a bit, but I have another perspective since I'm a local government member. And I'm quite convinced, at least the reason I entered politics was exactly what Paul said. When you look in the mirror or when you look at your own children, you think, okay, I'm doing everything I can to be able to say to our children that everything we have tried to be able to offer them a future. That's how I entered politics, or that's my main motive. For that, before I was elected in 2014, and before that, I actually didn't really hear about district heating. And so when I took on my position in 2014, we tried, Nantes has been working on district heating for several years. The fact was there was an opportunity because we had a district heating that was not working on renewables, but since the 70s, so that's the history we built on. And we tried, we had one experience in 2008 that I inherited after in 2014. That was, we did it publicly, and we made a biomass heating, etc., in an area that actually wasn't really, there weren't a lot of houses built, and there were new houses, so with new laws that made them more energy efficient than the older ones. And so it wasn't a big success. What I think is important is that we all often have the tendency to talk about the successes that make us move forward, but I think we learn more from our mistakes. And it was not a mistake because we tried, we knew district heating was something that was part of the energy deal to move forward to renewables. But we reoriented our policies by thinking, okay, so where do we really need heat? And so we did that study, and it amounted to the fact that we needed to go where there were old building stocks that were where there was a lot of heat that was needed, and there was a lot of concentration of that need. So that's how we build on our strategy on the district heating. And we also built a strategy that was to not have one huge district heating network, but several. That was because district heating, the investment is pretty long to be reimbursed by the investment that are made. And we thought it would be better or smarter to work with different private partners that we make them compete with each other so they get us the best answers, and we have better technology as we go, so that makes us more free to act and work. You see, we have two different groups, and we have another group with whom we're working, because it's important to not be dependent on, for a local government, it's important to be able to see that we're not able to do it by ourselves as a public sector, but in the way we work with the private sector, to be able to have a real leverage and not to be dependent on just one big group, because even though it's really important and we are working with the economic sector to make it more green, I think it's the key question or the key challenge we all face in tackling climate change, because we are really good in inventing solutions on the energy transition sector, but it's how we decarbonize our economy that's now the real big question. So I think that's at least the way we worked on our stage. So our objectives for Nantes regarding climate change, and district heating is a really important part of it, was to diminish by 30% our greenhouse gas emissions from between 2003 to 2020, so we're almost there. And the figures we have, the evaluations, show that we are on the good track, so that's a good sign. And our new objectives are to reduce by half, so 50% by 2030. So on our first objectives, district heating amounts for 11% of our objectives. So that's to say that in cities, as to when it comes to renewables, of course the first leverage is, as was said, is to reduce our consumption, our energy consumption, and in housing and in transport. But on the renewables, we have our biggest asset is the local district heating. We have been a green European capital in 2013, so it's important to remember that in a European Congress. For those who didn't know, when they came into Nantes, we have Jules Verne, who was born here. We had other people who were born here, but we also were European green capital because we have that broad, I think, approach. Why I'm saying that is that that European, I think, as a city that has an experience with district heating, it's important to give it more push on the European level as well, to be recognized as a real renewable energy, because often we talk about solar energy, sometimes geothermal, and wind energy, but for us wind energy, when you're in a very urbanized area, it's quite difficult to go there, or it's more difficult. So I think district heating is really an important thing to move on with, and that's one part, I think, in the future. If we, in 2050, there's just one question I tend to ask myself, because we have and the pragmatic approach looked at our district heating and see where there's heat that is already produced by the waste management, for example. But in 2050, I truly hope we will have significantly reduced the waste we need to burn, and we have, as all district heating plants, a part that's with gas, which is not renewable energy. So that's more easy, I guess, because it's going to biogas on that part of the energy production. But those are, I think, in 2050, it's really that how do we make the grids completely green and more efficient.
Thank you. Thank you, Anton.
Yeah. Good morning, also from my side. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, great pleasure to be here on such a plenum. Very seldom, yes. And yeah, I like to take the view on this nice time machine we had on the beginning on Jules Verne. What will be if we could walk out of such a time machine in 2050? What will I see? I guess I would see a lot of district heating and cooling. So I think we had already heard some percentages. But I believe we will, in a global phase, be clearly above 50%. In Europe, maybe even earlier on this 50%. So I think this is really ambitious. It's also, of course, a very nice future. And why is that so? I think district energy will be, and we heard it, I think a very customer-friendly system. It will be completely renewable and will be very competitive. And I think this is very interesting that we see such a big potential and this very, very attractive value proposition for the society and for the individual customer. And what will bring us there? I think this is the nice time machine out in 2050, but what will bring us there? And I think from a technology point of view, I think there are a few things really important and mentioned already, but digitalization is for sure one of the key things here which will change our industry. I think you can say disrupt. I don't like disrupt so much, but it will really change and transform not only district energy, but also the sector and the industry as such. And within digitalization, what does this digitalization at the heart? It really drives energy efficiency. So we really drive energy efficiency to a new level. And by that, of course, cost will go down. Not only energy cost, direct cost, but also operational cost. So at the end of the day, digitalization is a great lever to make district energy even more competitive than today. And when you look in the technology side, then I like to highlight 3 different technologies within the digitalization journey. One is 5G, in the sense of the mobile data network, because this enables us to collect all the data from all the devices out in the field. And even the field devices can then talk and communicate to each other. So it brings you to a completely different level. And that means, for example, if a field service guy calls in or a customer is calling in, the guy who is sitting in the call center knows exactly what is happening out in the field and the network data. So this is really a new level what you can achieve. But when you get all these data in, there are a lot of many data coming in from these devices, you need another very important technology, which is artificial intelligence, because you need to have a way how to deal with all the data and making right decisions from this data. So you're really getting up to speed so you can handle the data and creating value out of that data. And here I think there's good examples of getting better load forecasting from intraday or for day or long-term perspective. And you can also get a much better understanding of the behavior of your network. So what is the energy storage capacity of the network or the buildings, how they behave. So I think there are many things which can be answered by that. And the third one is bidirectional systems. And when you look at district energy today, then we have a few heat sources. We are clearly on the way to move to more heat sources. But imagine if along the way of the network you can harvest all the energy sources and waste heat you have and feed it into the system, then I think you get a much more reliable and much better renewable system than today. So I think these are 3 technologies which I think are really important in the future. But I think today is also happening a lot already today. And you can say, for example, one good practical example is the energy lab in Nordhavn in Copenhagen. It's a district in the city of Copenhagen where the city of Copenhagen really experiment how to go to a fully carbon-free environment where they integrate all different energy systems from power, transport, and so on. And I think by this we can really bring, so to say, an integrated energy system, which I think at the end of the day, if we like to go fully decarbonized, is important. Yeah? And if we talk about future, then I think always the most important is we build the future. And I think we can also say we build the future today. And I think this we should never forget when we talk about these things. It is happening today and not in 2050. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I mean, there's plenty of food for thought there. I'd like to pick up Julie's question, and she said, how do we make the district heating networks green? And we've mentioned waste to energy. Biomass is something that keeps coming up. And in Denmark, which you've seen in an example, a lot of the district heating is based on biomass, and as I'm sure many of you have seen, in spring last year, the Danish Council on Climate Change warned that Denmark's heavy reliance on especially imported biomass means that actually district heating could be worse for climate change than the solution it's claiming to be. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about you in terms of Is biomass the long-term solution in 2050? Will there be these massive percentages of biomass, or are there other solutions in terms of waste heat especially, and is that what more technologies should be looking at? And if biomass is the future, how does the industry itself show that it's been sustainable in its use of green technology and really is green by 2050? Perhaps you can start. Carol.
Yes, I believe biomass is key for the future, but I believe biomass is not the only solution. I think we must always go back first to the needs. What are the energy needs? Work on the energy efficiency, and then find out the best mix to meet people's need. And in this mix, of course, we'll look at all the local resources that are available. And as I said, if geothermal is available, it's good. If there is recovery, waste energy available, it's important to try to grab it. And then biomass, of course, if we want to reach the zero carbon objective, zero carbon means that, yes, we may still have some emissions of carbon, but we'll need also to work on the biomass to have more carbon sinks and really have a clever understanding of how biomass is our partner to achieve this transition. So I think it's very important for us, coming from the industry, more, I would say, the gray technologies, to understand not only the digital now, how it is going to change our industry and helping energy efficiency, but also the vegetal. The vegetal is also a great technology. The nature-based solutions are going to be key for the future. It's important for us to really understand how it is not only a resource for our technologies, for the district heating and cooling systems, but also a technology that is a complement, a partner to what we want to achieve. For instance, we speak a lot about heating, and we think about the biomass for having energy for the heating systems. But in fact, in the future, the heating, the climate change is already here, so our cities are going to be hotter and hotter. And all the cities now are very concerned about that, about this heating island effect, where the cities are even hotter than the outside rural areas. And so we know that to meet our people's, the people need to be fresh in the city. We'll need to develop cooling systems, but also help the cities to cool itself. And the biomass, or the vegetalization of the infrastructure, of the roads and the buildings is going to be key to achieve that. So I would say biomass is an entrance for our industry, but it's also a partner to achieve together better cities.
And would you like your industry to have criteria so you can actually prove and in the future say, this is a green system? How can you say a system's green or not green? Or
right. I think I think one of the challenge that we have ahead is to make things simple, more visible, more simple, achievable. But in fact, the reality is complex. So it is very important to be based on science and to have very thorough studies on the life cycle of the biomass we use, but not only on the biomass, on the logistics and all the different technologies that we use. We have to think in terms of global impact and be able to assess the life cycle of our technologies.
Yep. Thank you. Sylvie, did you want to add anything?
It's just to add something, I agree we will need to maximize the mix. But biomass is really important because in France, we have lots of biomass available. You know, the forest at that time is more important than 50 years ago. So the forest is growing in France. So, and we have a huge quantity of energy to produce if we want to develop renewables in district heatings, and to be able to use this, I would say, fuel wood is really, really important. And maybe we have in mind that it cannot be good for the forest. It is just the contrary, because when we use wood for energy, we don't use the wood which is going to be used for furniture. We use the rest, you know, the other part of the tree that cannot be used for the furniture or for building. So it's like a waste, you know. So we use these small branches and so on to use it in our plants, and we produce renewables because, you know, of course, that wood is a good way to capture and to storage the CO2. So the storage of CO2 is much more important during you know, when the tree is growing than when it's burned. So it's a good I would say a good way to develop renewables in district heating, but waste energy also, and recovery energy also, and we have also to save energy and to optimize and to use digital to be very, very you know, efficient in what we do. So it's also the question.
Okay. Yep.
So it's not only a good question because you picked up on one of my comments, but I actually was confronted with in 2015 when we wanted to build a new biomass plant with people living around the future plant who said, is burning wood to produce heat really a green solution? And that makes you question some certainties you hear and on which you build to invest the question. We already had invested the questions because our energy planning teams that have been planning district heating did answer or partly answer that question by, in our contracts with the private sector, to demand that the wood wouldn't come from out of a certain area around Nantes, because it is completely insane to build biomass plants and to import wood that has a big impact. The way that the wood is produced can have a big impact on the environment. So it was no question that we would get wood from Canada or China through carbon-fueled ships that would come into a harbor, because that would just not make sense. And I think biomass and working with the local actors on the field to provide the biomass is one way also to have environmental benefits. The way to contract with local agricultures, for example, to maintain the forest, but also that maintains a certain amount of biodiversity. So in that sense, we need to be really looking at what kind of biomass is being burnt on our district heating system, and that make the fact that the people around the new biomass plant asked all those questions make us more picky on the criteria we would set. And luckily we have, even in the Nantes area, a lot of forest or wood that is available, and some cities from Nantes Métropole, because Nantes Métropole is a community of 24 different cities in different sizes. After the great energy debate we had in 2016, want to have their own little biomass plants with their own local resources. So that completely makes sense to provide the energy needs with what we have on our ground.
Okay, great, thanks. I was going to say, okay, quickly, because then we'll move on to our next question. Do you want to just quickly...
Just one figure, because it creates jobs. Of course, it is local biomass, very important to say that. It creates jobs. We evaluated by Dalkia, our activity, we evaluated that it created 2,000 jobs last year. So, you know, it's really good also for, you know, the society.
Excellent. Very quickly, because then we'll move on to a different question.
To mention also that biomass is not only wood, it can be all kind of biomass, and that's why, and also very watery biomass can make very good biogas. So that's why we also believe that biogas is important. It can recycle, reuse agricultural waste. So when we speak about biomass, we must have in mind that it's not only wood, it's also biogas.
Excellent, thank you very much. Anton, I wanted to come back to you now on digitization. And you mentioned about creating value from the data that we're collecting. So first of all, how can we make sure that digitization isn't just a word and everybody has a smart meter, but actually it's not really achieving anything? It's perhaps even using more energy because we have to create these meters in the first place. And I know that in the UK and other places, they've had to replace the first generation of smart meters because they weren't really up to scratch. So how can we make sure we create value, and who should be doing that? Is it the companies like yourselves? Is it at a local authority level, or do we need tech giants like the Amazons or the Googles of this world to sort of come in, and should they be sitting in this conference and listening to what's being said from the industry?
Yeah, I think, I don't think we need Google, but that's a different question. No, I think the good thing is we at the end of the day, we have hydraulic systems, so we need to control water. At the end of the day, the performance of the system is characterized how good you're distributing water and how good you control water. So this is what it's at the end of the day. And the digital part is only helping you to making better decisions. So I think it's not a way what it can be completely disrupted with digital, so everything is on the digital, yeah? So I think this is the big difference, and that's the reason why we are at least not afraid and concerned about other players coming in, yeah? So, and from the digital part, I think you need to differentiate between two sides of in the heating business. One side is what is inside the apartment, what is, so to say, going under the slogan smart home. And here it's of course very consumer driven, and maybe here Google and Amazon, these guys with their voice recognition of Alexa and Siri will play a role because it's an easy user interface in this smart home environment. But then we have also, so to say, the backbone, which is the primary system and the real heating system. And here, I think it's really the network operators who will optimize, yeah, and drive the benefit of the system. I think this is where it comes. And the meter is maybe an example which is coming out of the middle, yeah, which is on the consumer side partly, and which goes to the operator, and which has got a different feedback on different sides. But even on the meters, you can see that with the narrowband IoT coming up, you will have suddenly heat meters out which can be connected directly to the network, to the cloud, and having a very long lifetime on batteries. Yeah, and nowadays it's handled differently. You need to, connect all this and to higher cost. So I think there's also a big change in this coming into us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Do you want to add? Yep, Carol.
I would say today we cannot live, we cannot operate without digital tools. So digital is a tool today. It's a fact. At NG, we have a DHC platform that is called Nemo, another tribute to Jules Verne, maybe, and and it's key for cost optimization, as you mentioned. It's important for us to study projects because it is important to find, as Julie said, the right places where to put the DHC networks and optimize the network. And it's important then after, when the network is built, to run the network, because as I said, our networks are more and more complicated, sophisticated, and also we want to know more and more about the actual use of energy that our clients have, to be able to serve them with the best energy and efficient energy. So it's, I would say today it's a fact. Yep. The key is to optimize the cost of all these devices so that it is lower than the cost that we can gain from the action.
Okay, thank you. Yep, did you want to add? Or?
And the question, with digital, we have the issue of behavior, because Patrick Dixon told us that when are we going to act really? as a person. So with digital, I'm sure in this room, many of you cannot avoid reading emails and so on, or tweets. And with digital, you can change the behavior, I'm sure. Maybe with Alexa, I don't know, but we have to imagine the good tools to make people act, to be an actor of the consumption, to save energy. And it will be also to make them involved in the fight of the against climate change.
Okay, great. So before I open the floor up for questions, I just had one more question. So we know how to make the networks green. We know that digitization is going to be key. We need to work with local actors. What's the main thing, though, that's really going to push it? So as Patrick Dixon said, that we can move forward and district heating and cooling is really seen as part of the solution, because this is all very well and good, but it still sounds very incremental. What's the thing that's really going to push us? Is it regulation? Is it investment? I mean, what's the key, and how do we make that happen? Sylvie, you're nodding. I'll let you take the question.
Oh, we need regulation and policy, of course, because we have maybe global policy with COP21 and so on, and we have national policy. For example, to help the development of heating networks in France, we have Fonds Chaleur, so it is heating funds, which is managed by the French agency, which is called ADEME, and it is necessary for us to be helped by the Fonds Chaleur to help them, because those renewables, very local resources, are not competitive alone. So it needs money. So national money, national policy, but also we need local, because we need the will of a territory, the will of a mayor, the will of la ville de Nantes, the non-town, which is very involved, which has the idea and the will to build a new heating network. So it is a local policy. And I would say heating and cooling networks are real local political tools to act,
And obviously in Nantes, there's a will to do that. What's stopping other métropoles, other towns or cities moving forward? Is it because they're scared, because they don't know enough about district heating? What's the problem?
Just to speak about money, as Dalkia, I am able to invest. I am investing every day in local heating district networks, and we have a very efficient model, which is called délégation de service public. I would say public service delegation contract, so agreement, and this is a very efficient model in France to make player like Dalkia, private player, to invest with a town and to be able to have a very good project. Often it is for a duration of 20 or 25 years, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you. Did either of you wanted to? Yeah, Carole?
I would say we need many things, but we need maybe three things, I would say. One is visibility. I think it's our responsibility as industrial operator, and also together with the local communities that we serve, maybe to be more outspoken and speak about our business. So thank you very much for your good articles, because we're doing a wonderful job, but not very well known, and I think it will be also a help for the local communities that invest their also in this kind of tools, that we speak more about what we're doing, and it's a wonderful job, and it's good for the planet, it's good for the people, it's good for local development, it's local energy. Well, all these benefits that we have, I think we should speak more about it and make it a visible fight. As we said, in France, it's only 6% of the heating solution. If we want to do more, we have to give the ambition and say it. The second thing is, as we always exchange together, it's money. But money, economy, is confidence. As Jacques Delors said, economy is confidence. So can we build this trust between industrial groups and local communities, as Julie said, maybe with emulation, small competition. But at the end, once we trust each other, then we can go very far and for long. So it's very important to be able to build this trust between private groups and local communities for a common objective. Even though we know there will be a lot of things on the path, but if we trust each other, then we'll find solutions together. And the third thing is, I think, to be very pragmatic, because as we say in France, the evil is in the details, and we know that today it's complicated to succeed in the economic equation. Very often something is not right, or so we have to really look in the details how we can find solutions together. And there are solutions that are local solutions, some are industrial solutions, some are national solutions, some are at the European level that can help. And I think the European level has helped a lot in making more known what has been achieved in many countries in Europe. So it's important that we benefit from this return of experience. As Julie said, we learn from each other. We learn also from the mistakes and the success stories. So I think it's important that we keep having more and more exchange of experience on that.
Yep, Julie.
I think one major thing that wasn't mentioned is to democratize the district heating. Because the thing is, it's hard to explain what it is because it's under the ground. The power plants are not all said what it is on them. And with renewable energies, you can have citizens participating through funding in a windmill or in solar panels. They can install solar panels on their own houses. And district heating is it's much more difficult to explain what it is and that it has a major impact. And how can you make it more participatory for the people that benefit from it? That with the fact that when we invested in district heating, we were convinced that that's why we have 20,000 social households that are connected to our district heating today, with our objective to have 50% of our social households on the city of Nantes connected. But the thing is that with the gas prices that were pretty low, it's hard to explain that district heating will be more competitive on the price sector, and it's a difficult thing to explain. So I think the way we have to build on it is how to build it with the citizens, the ones that benefit from it, and the ones that the industrials that have residual heat that could be connected to it. But how do you make it a real society issue of how to move forward on district heating?
Excellent, thank you, Julie. I know we're running slightly late, so we'll run slightly into lunchtime because I'm sure there's lots of questions out there. Does anybody want to put their hand up? And I think there are some mics going round for anybody who has a question. There's a gentleman over there who's got them. Otherwise, just stand up and yell very loudly, and I'm sure we'll hear you. Do you want to just stand up and shout? Because the mics don't seem to have appeared. Thank you. Excellent, thank you. Did everybody hear that? So basically it's the links between district heating and gas and electricity networks, and I think Carol can kick us off with the answer. Thank you.
Well, for the moment, it's true that there are very different networks, but already, the local communities have an overview on all of them, so I think it's a first very important thing that more and more local communities take the lead to define what they want on them. And also it's a fact that almost all the district heating and cooling systems have impacts on the electricity networks. For instance, in Paris, we operate CPCU, the big heating network. We also make CHP, so we have a big generation of electricity for Paris. And we operate also the cooling system, and we are able to erase our consumption of electricity, especially in the winter. It's very easy to erase our consumption of electricity because we can store ice, and then suddenly we can release a lot of electricity on the network. So there is already a strong technical links between these networks, but it's true that it's not fully articulated. I think it's one of the challenges of the future.
Okay, Sylvia, but we are at the beginning of the story. We do have some example of what you say, double smart grid, and we have one in Nanterre near Paris. And you can imagine that you can have PV on roof, and the problem with PV is that the sun is when it is not the night. So we use the PV energy to produce heat in a storage. So we store water, and we do provide the heat at the end of the day. The sun is not is not here, but we have the water which is which is hot, and we can use it at the beginning of the night. So it's a way to be smart between the electrical generation on the roof and the heating networks. I hope I am clear. So it is double smart grid. It is the beginning of such systems, I think, and we will have to optimize both with local area in towns that can call smart city also.
Thank you, Anton.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add. I think to answer the question correctly, I think is to understand the basics of district energy. That means district energy is a distribution system by one side, and on the other hand, a huge energy storage. And I think this is the huge advantage in the sector coupling, what we're talking here. And when you look at Denmark, for example, Denmark could have not that high wind exposure, wind power, if they would not use district heating as their energy storage. Yeah? And I think also the second part, when you look about green gas and this power to gas, then I think will only work that you again use that in the most sufficient way, and that would be again in a CHP. So I think actually all these technologies playing at the end of the day together, and not it's not a separate game. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions that anybody wanted to? Yeah, right at the back. Sorry, have we got a mic? No, if you can just stand up and shout, and I'll try or interpret. Feel free to come a bit nearer the front if you wish. Okay. Thank you. Can you just remind us which company you're from in case anybody wishes to follow up?
Yes, I have to reveal it. It's Solar.
Thank you. Does anybody want to comment on what you've just heard?
Yeah, it's true that it's important to mention sun. We operate at NG, I think, I have in mind 2, but maybe 3 district heating with the solar. So yes, it works. The fact is that for the moment it is quite expensive. It needs a lot of public subsidies, but it is important to start, learn from this experience, and see how it evolves. I think, and as you mentioned, there are also a lot of experience in other countries. I think it depends on the local possibilities. Also, you need quite a lot of space to put them. But yes, it's a technology that is available, has some cost. Maybe in some situation, it can be adapted to the special needs of a community.
Yeah, just to add, I think solar, of course, is a good additional to the mix, as also mentioned before. And we know the networks, for example, Silkeborg is a network using a big solar plant. And of course, solar has a big advantage to operate the domestic hot water during summer. I think this is really where it brings a benefit in.
Okay, thank you. Was there a final question before lunch, or is everyone just the final question from? Yep, you stand up and shout and.
In our discussions that topics like urban heat island or urban density are very important for district heating and cooling. And I would like to know how you bridge the gap between urban planning and energy systems.
Do you want to take the question?
I didn't quite understand what you mean by the gap.
Like lots of decisions are made in the process of urban planning, and they have a great impact on the energy systems.
Okay, so that was a good question, because we addressed that during this mandate. Because we had one big urban planning plan that we just voted on a few months ago, or a few weeks even ago, and it was the first time that we actually put in we didn't quite have the time to finish our local energy master plan that we would have liked to finish before our urban planning, but it was the first time that we actually put in things about how to isolate the houses, or how to orient the houses in order to have less needs of energy in the buildings we build. So we stopped building just blocks without seeing where the sun comes from and where the winds come from, but we try to be smarter than that, to have a better connection with the place we live, we work, and we go to school, to be able to have less carbonized transport, but also to address the how do you say it, the heating islands that were addressed in the beginning, because that can be a problem, and we saw it in our climate change plan with the adaptation part, that we need to address that question. So how to be able to have more trees, for example, because as Nantes is not a really hot area yet, we tend to address the global problem first, but now we also had to address the adaptation or the resilience of our city. And we tend to not want to make it worse. I heard about the cooling system for now in Nantes. If we look at a cooling system, it's where we need really cooling for fridges, for example, or in the hospital, but not really to cool the houses. At least we're not at that point yet. And we tend to want to address that question by the way we urbanize the city, as to avoid the urban heating, so to have demineralization, if that's a correct word in English, and to have more plants where there is a really heat problem, and that's more in the center of the city. So that's the way we try to address that question.
Excellent, thank you. I'm sorry we're going to have to finish there if we want to have lunch. So I'd like to thank all our panellists for speaking today. And just to finish, I'm quite surprised because I thought we'd have had a lot more questions about investment. And Patrick Dixon mentioned the need that the First World War cost 56 billion, was it dollars? And the reason that they could raise that money was because everybody was on side and everybody was passionate that this money was needed. And I think that seems to be what's lacking here, is that you all need to go out and be better salespeople, perhaps, and really sell what you're doing with much more passion so that everybody can see that the technology is there, it works, it just needs to now be rolled out and to have people behind you, which will make it easier for people at the city level to build those local relationships and roll out district heating. So you're all now invited to lunch, which is very kindly sponsored by Energy. And thank you very much. A round of applause for our speakers. Thank you.